Hey,
Hi, how is everyone?
all right,
Good,
mate.
good.
Yeah, you.
Not bad.
Yeah, we're good. So, quick introduction. So, we've got Greg Warburton in one of the corners, Dylan, as everyone knows, and then we've got JJ with us, who is we're honoured to have that he's given some of his time, and I'll wait for him to put his jumper on.
That's all right. I can hear you.
Just a bit annoyed. Well, we can't hear you. So, he's an ex-Paralympian. He's been an ex-professional coach, ex-pro player, and he's one of the most respected people in the world of wheelchair basketball. I think, not just in the UK, he's got a lot of respect, and we're honoured that you've given us some of your time, and thanks for being here.
No problem. Good to be here.
Yeah, and we've obviously got Gregg, world MVP again. Thanks for coming back. Who looks like he's been sitting in the sun a little bit today, possibly.
Busted.
I can't take my eyes off him, actually. He's glowing in the corner.
I'm a glowing.
Yeah, similar
In my defence, it is a little bit warm in here as well.
Fair enough.
Okay. So we've got four of us tonight. So this is it's hard work for me, if I'm honest. So Dylan, you've got some questions for Greg, but I think firstly we should talk a little bit about JJ and just tell us a bit about your basketball history. Like obviously, like I've mentioned, you as a pro coach in is it Roma, and you've done some pretty amazing things. Just tell us a bit about your background and your basketball past, really.
Well, the background is reasonably simple. It's like most people's, I suppose, that I started playing in about 1978, 79, before Greg or Dylan were around, maybe even you, Jack.
Yes, thank you.
And just, it was a progression from there. Played for a team in North London, left them and joined another team. After which, eventually, I ended up at MK Aces as my third team, and I guess that's where things took off, so to speak. I ended up playing for GB for 13 years. There was a year in the calendar crossed off, which is another story for another day, where I had a year sabbatical, enforced or otherwise. But played for GB for all those years, then retired, put out to pasture, I suppose, in '99. I carried on playing, and then got the opportunity to go and play in Rome with Brad Ness and Troy Sachs and a couple of other guys, for the back end of the season. And then carried on playing here, and then I got the offer to go and coach in Rome, and I had two seasons coaching the Rome team, and then half a season coaching the team in Rieti, also in Italy. And in between, married an Italian, and rest is history, kind of thing. Yeah.
And you've recently become a father, haven't you? Which is congratulations.
Recently become a father. Yeah. Thank you for that. 3 months. Yeah. 3 months and counting.
Yeah. Congratulations. Mate.
Yeah, cheers. Congrats.
Cheers, mate.
We do have a video from the 1996 game that we have played before, but obviously I think it was just me and Dylan here. It adds a little bit of weight if you're here as well. We won't play that just yet, but
okay. The less I see of that, the better.
Sorry?
The less I see of that, the better. But yeah, I'm happy to reacquaint myself with our greatest failure, in my opinion. But yeah.
Well, unfortunately, there's not enough footage of out there for us to find with all the good stuff.
No. That's fine.
We did search. Just like, you told me something about something that happened in '92 in Spain, which is quite a while ago in terms of wheelchair basketball. And it sounds, from what you told me, it sounds pretty intense. And I haven't heard the full story, so I'd like to hear it. And I'm not sure anyone else has. So yeah.
Well, yeah, that was extraordinary. I mean, my first Paralympics was in Korea in '88. So just, first Paralympics was an experience in itself. which I don't have to explain. Don't have to explain to Gregg what a feeling that is when you go for your first one. And then we ended up in Spain, in Barcelona for the '92. And the story, and it's nothing that that could have been that I envisaged, really. It was so different and intense. Spanish crowds are so supportive and vocal and passionate. Gregg will understand, having played abroad in the Latino spirit. So we played a group game against Spain, and the stadium's full. It was capacity, I'll say, 12,500 people, filled up, and it's all on TV, and people watching it in bars, and it's extraordinary. It was an extraordinary thing, and it was a good game, a very close game, which we won by a point. But the controversial point was towards the end of the game, where they had a possession to effectively win the game. They made the shot, but the referee made a travelling call against one of their players, and that gave us possession, and they lost the game. And there was absolute uproar. Their players were not happy. They questioned the call. Technicals were handed out, shouting, screaming, etc., etc. But the result was the result. And what happened was, one of their players, after the game, having had a shower and stuff, was leaving the auditorium from the changing rooms, and there's like a little cafeteria area in the stadium, and he saw the referee that made the call having a drink or whatever, and he just couldn't help himself. He ran in there, and he was 4.5, so he could run in there, and he threw a pint of water over this referee, and he threw a glass of water over him and ran off. What happened then? Obviously, that couldn't just be let lie. So the authorities banned him for the next game. And so that was in the group stages. Then we got to the knockout stage. The next game was against us again. And in the intervening period, this was like in the newspapers, and people. I mean, it was capacity again, 12,500 people. They turned 4,000 people away. So there were like 4,000 people outside the stadium. And again, people watching it. Yeah, it's completely mad, watching it on TV. And they were absolutely baying for our blood. It was like nothing on earth. And we won the game again, a very close game, and we knocked them out. And there were like people with banners saying, justice for Salvador, the player in question, because he'd been banned. We won the game, close game again, and we won. And they were throwing things at us, tennis balls and bottle tops, and it was that sort of atmosphere. And once we'd showered and we were leaving, as you left the stadium, there's like it's a cage, basically, a corridor, but it's caged off, and the public on one side, and the police wouldn't let us leave because there were like hundreds of people just clinging onto the metal fence, baying for our blood, basically. So the police said, "Look, it's best if you guys wait here for about an hour before going out, just in case." I don't think anything terrible would have happened, but it was quite an intimidating atmosphere. So that was that, really. I mean, we went on to lose. We could have gone. I think we could have advanced to the next stage, but we lost to a Hail Mary shot against the Germans, which I still haven't got over. A guy just launched it from the halfway line, buzzer beat, and it went in, and we were out, and we could have advanced to the next stage, which would have been fine for us. We had no expectations about making semi-finals and final. We weren't at that stage in our development where we could have realistically had ambitions of podiums or even semi-finals, but it was a choker to lose in that way. So that was the whole Spain story.
Oh, and do you think there's that much passion? Like, do you think there could be an event like that in this day and age for wheelchair basketball in Spain, like Gregg maybe? Do you think there's that much passion going on for the sport anywhere?
I think Turkey is the one that springs to mind, innit? If you had to name one. I guess so. I feel like it's difficult because I'm not sure what it was like in JJ's day, but sort of in the sort of domestically, you don't get a chance, or your own supporters or fans don't really get a chance to see you play, to see you win anything. Sorry. They only see regular season games, and obviously playoffs and the cups is all at a neutral venue. So yeah, so domestically speaking, in the leagues, that would obviously be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think you're right about Turkey, though, aren't you? I mean, playing
Yeah.
against Turkey in front of Turkish crowds is like nothing on earth. I mean, even if you ask professional footballers, if you ask where's the last place you want to play an away leg of a cup or whatever, they're all going to say Turkey. I think it's hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually found out some information that, like, for example, when a tournament's at a certain place, the Turkish, people from Turkey message the Turkish community in that place. And, like, so for example, all the Turkish fans that live in Hamburg will come to the Wilds.
Yeah.
It happened at the same last year at the Women's Euros. All
Yeah.
the ones that lived in Rotterdam came there, and so it's quite a strong bond all over the world. Really, you'll always get passionate Turkish.
And thank God for them, really. Yeah, you need that. I mean, it takes the sport, it takes the game to another level, and we need more of that. But you only get it in certain places. Gregg will testify.
Yeah. How do we get more of that? We want more of that. More trash talking. More
Go and play in Turkey.
No, definitely not. Nah, just a little bit more like an English league game or something, like just a little bit more hype. But
never going to happen, Jack.
Yeah. Thing is, with like,
I disagree.
In British games, it's literally just people's mums and dads and brothers, and there's no like real.
Exactly.
Even like Landil fans, aren't like rowdy or anything, but no, they are but they're rowdy in a positive way. But like unfortunately, I don't think we'll get anything like that here. But,
no, the culture is
Dylan
different.
just wants the riots.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
No, we just have one in Essex, Dylan. We'll have a riot in Essex.
And it was mad.
I just shut the door out here because I've got people playing basketball outside, and all I can hear is the basketball. So I need to shut the door. I'll be back in 1 second.
No worry. But yeah, like it was mad. Like even last year at the Women's Euros in Rotterdam, there was like the Turkish women were there. They got promoted from Division B, so they weren't at the same standard as like the other teams. But the fans were still like passionate about them, no matter what the result was. Which I always thought was good.
Yeah, it was great. I mean,
they get support all over the world, don't they?
Yeah, it's crazy, but fantastic.
Yeah, it was similar story to JJ, not quite as extreme. But the craziest place I ever played was also Turkey. While we're on the topic of it, we played away in Adana. I'm not sure if you've ever played there, JJ.
Oh,
but,
no, but
it's like
I've been there.
Yeah, it's a crazy place, and they're very passionate people. We had the under 23 World Championships there in 2013, and so bear in mind I was only 15. I think I was 14 or 15, and like it was a junior tournament. So we played Turkey in the quarterfinal, and the whole sort of bleachers were packed out with like 2,500-3,000 people, and it was like intense. Like they didn't care that you were 15. They were giving it you, and they were like throwing stuff at the end.
Yeah.
And it was like aired live on Turkish TV and that. So that was the craziest moment. And we had a similar thing being locked in the changing rooms at the end as well for safety. I'm not sure what would happen to a bunch of 15 to 18-year-olds, but yeah.
To think. That sounds exciting. Sorry, I've got to open my phone and my notes. We've got a few questions from other people, and one of them, like JJ's, advice, because you're talking about the juniors and stuff like that, and all these experience, advice that you would give to a younger player, like Gregg or someone. So say he was 8.
I think Gregg's past the point where I could give him advice.
The
guy's the best player in the world. So
yeah, my bad.
I think we'll leave Gregg aside.
We'll try. We'll test that one out.
What would you tell an 18-year-old JJ? There we go. We lost it.
I think basically the biggest catch up, if I had to concentrate, it's going to be very boring. But the hardest thing I found was playing catch up. I mean, I played for several years before I took that next step up to play for Milton Keynes. And I mean, I'd played for a long time before that happened. I said I've been playing already like 15 years or something, I think, before I joined Milton Keynes, and I got a different level of coaching. And the hardest thing I found was playing catch up with my fundamental skills, which quite frankly were awful when I got there, and they weren't that great when I left, but they were better than they were. So if I had to really distill it down to one thing, you've got to put in the time to do the boring things, your fundamentals, your dribbling, your passing, and the things that we were never told. I mean, I'm assuming that maybe the coaching's a little bit better now than it was 40 years ago, where people never said you've got to be able to do things with your weak hand, and none of that really happened. And so I got to that team, and also the GB setup, and I was a little bit behind the curve. But I wasn't the only one, because none of us were really taught fundamentals, or most of us weren't taught fundamentals. So it's really boring. But I think put in all the fitness work you can, but get those fundamentals right. Because if you haven't got your fundamentals right, your passing and your dribbling, you look around the league. I mean, I still go and keep in touch, and I coach a little bit here and there, and I watch games whenever I can. And it's still astonishing the number of players who can't dribble a ball without looking at it. Now, if you can't dribble a ball without looking at it, that is a fundamental, because if you're looking at the ball, you can't see the cone in front of you. It's boring, but if I had to put my finger on one thing, get your fundamentals up and running, and once they're all instilled in your muscle memory, the rest becomes the game becomes so much easier.
Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in people's like routines as well. Like, did you have a special free throw routine? Because I know Gregg does. Did you have like a set?
I went through a few, because I think most players go through a few. If you play for long enough, Gregg probably was the same, where and you have to settle on one, and in the end, mine was really the one that was effective. Was really simple, just line up, 2 bounces, breathing. You got to get your breathing, or I had to get my breathing right, and release. And that's it. 2 bounces, breathe, release. Other people have far more complicated routine. So I'm not quite sure what Gregg's is. I can't remember, although I've seen him shoot quite a few over the years. But
yeah, it's I think I could probably do it.
Yeah, the trademark.
Yeah, I think I could probably do it if I thought about it. Might get you to do it, Gregg.
It's been that long, I forgot.
Have you?
Yeah.
No, you haven't. Dylan, I know you've got some questions for Gregg, and possibly JJ as well. I'm not sure, but yeah, ask some of the questions that you've got for these guys.
Yeah, so Gregg, I promise I will get to you in a bit, but after hearing JJ speak, I want to ask him some questions. So
so good. I'm enjoying it. Keep it going.
Yeah. So JJ, I was speaking to Gaz Chowdhury recently, and he said that in '92 that was the first Paralympics that they allowed amputees to play. So obviously you played in '88 before they were allowed, and then obviously in '92 when they were allowed. Like, what were some of the similarities and differences in the game in that 4-year span?
Well, the I'm not sure about the years. If Gaz says that's right, that's probably right. But I know that when I first started playing, amputees weren't allowed to play at international level, and it was a long time. I think Gordon Perry might have been the first GB player who was an amputee, and it was a long fight. And it took all of us to support that cause, and it was ridiculous, to be fair. But I have to say that once amputees were allowed to play, the game definitely had a different dynamic. It took on a different life, where it became way more spectacular, because obviously, the amputees, whether they're below the knee or even just above the knee, they're so much more mobile, and and it just gave the game a different level. which added to it. And I've always been in favour of anything that adds to the game. And amputees was a big fight, and in the end, it was great that if you think about it, if that closed-minded thinking continued, there'd be no Troy Sachs, there'd be no Gertjan van der Linden, there'd be no Patrick Anderson. We can't leave him out of any amputee or basketball conversation. Guys like that, you wouldn't have seen them, and without them, I think we can agree the game would be poorer.
There'd be no Gregg Warburton.
Richard. Sorry, Gregg. Yeah.
No Richard Pullen.
I was focusing on the game.
Yeah.
No, the game would be really poor without Richard Pullen.
Legend.
Uncle Rich.
Any more questions, Dylan, for JJ?
A couple more. So, linking it back to the current situation going on with the IPC/IWBF debate with the classification, what's your opinion on that? Do you know much about it?
I'm not across it as much as I should be. I'm sure Gregg is way more across it than I have. Suffice to say that classification from time immemorial has been a subject of much argument and discussion, and there have always been players who everybody thinks, well, there's no way he's a 2.5, or there's no way he's the point, there's no way he's a 1. So classification has always been a debating point. Now the IPC, as I understand it, it's really going to be applied to people who have disabilities that are not obvious. Is that right, Gregg? Am I in the ballpark?
Yeah.
So I think Gregg will probably be more across the current situation than I am.
Right. Well, I'm not.
He doesn't want to hear from me yet. Is that what it is?
No. It's I don't. If you want to say something on it, then feel free. But I don't want you getting in trouble by anyone. So. It's,
No, yeah. I'll just elaborate on JJ's point because he's hit the nail on the head. Just that it seems to be more sort of eligibility rather than questioning sort of the details of classification. I guess that will come at a later date, but for now it does seem to be sort of minimal disabilities that are being targeted, and sort of if you're eligible to play the game at all rather than sort of contesting your actual classification.
Yeah, it's a big moment. It's a big moment, really, because again, if I could throw names around, I think if I just say Helen Freeman could be in that it could be in the category where they say, oh, we don't know. I think am I right? George Bates could be in that category, Gregg?
I'm not actually sure.
Okay, but
I imagine so. I imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 4 or 5s all over the world, like you say. That.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're with minimal disabilities. GB, the GB women have had a couple in the past where they'd be up for question now, definitely.
Yeah. And then, last question for just now, JJ. I'll probably come back with some more later on. But after your playing career, I've noticed that you've done some punditry in the sport, which is obviously what I want to go into, or what I'm into just now. You've worked for BBC Channel 4. You commentated on our Paralympics. So how did all that come about, and what tips and advice would you give to people wanting to get involved in the media side of the sport?
That came about just through word of mouth, I suppose. Whenever those big events come along, these broadcasters are always looking for. I think Gregg and I have commentated together actually before, where they're always looking for somebody, and somebody or somebody else has put my name forward. I haven't really gone out punting for it. I haven't worked for it, put it that in the same way that you have. I know that you, off your own back and time and probably expense, you go around all over the place, and I've never done that. So I've been really fortunate, whereas you've had to work for all the jobs that you've had. If I had to give advice, I think the best bit of advice I can give people and it's not for you because I know that you're very thorough, is if you're doing it, especially for the first time, is do your homework. The research is everything. Have and have more information than you can possibly think you need. So have, even if you have 5 reams of paper and you only use one of them, you were prepared. If you have 1 ream of paper and you needed 2, then you're unprepared, and that's where you have to tread water, and treading water on live broadcasts is not fun at all. What, Jack?
That's me. Treading water.
So yeah, I think preparation. Again, if I had to distill it down to one thing, there's a lot of resources out there now. Online databases. Whenever you go to major championships, like information, background on players, especially if you're the person providing what they call color, then you need to be across all those backgrounds of players, interesting stories, stuff like that, stuff which I didn't think mattered, and to a point I still don't think certain things matter, but in broadcasting terms they do seem to matter. So be prepared.
Yeah. And it's like I wish I could relate to what you said there, but the truth is, when I went to the Wells, I didn't have any pieces of paper. It was just all in here.
Mate, if you've got an eidetic memory, good luck. But I don't. I need stuff written down.
Yeah, but
Dylan didn't need anything written down to shout cash monies for 2 weeks.
oh, I got some love, but my God, did I get some hate? Jesus Christ!
You're a legend, Dylan. That's all you need to know. Absolute legend. You're going to let Gregg talk now, Dylan?
Yeah.
What questions you got for Gregg? You told me you got loads.
Yeah, so I have. I'm gonna have to look at my phone actually because I've got.
Have you got it written down?
You've got it written what was he saying? Yeah.
I have got them written down. I've completely contradicted myself there, but yeah. So yeah, Gregg. So if you'd just like to talk about like how you first started wheelchair basketball, like any memories of your first session, memories of your time at Mavericks under Josie, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I'd sort of briefly touched on it last time I was on here with Jack, sort of how I come about starting playing. And it was just sort of word of mouth, sort of not really seen the sport before. I tried a multitude of different sports, every sport going and every sport under the sun I'd give a go. I've been sport mad forever, my whole life. So sort of stumbled into wheelchair basketball at like a multi-sports event through Josie, who obviously is no longer with us. She was my first ever coach, and as you all and everyone watching will agree, is obviously an influential part of your sort of progress, and everything comes from those fundamentals and foundations that are built. So yeah, that was a big part, and I'm not actually sure. It feels like a long time ago now, but I've maybe 4 or 5 years I was there, maybe a little bit longer, through the whole sort of junior system, which is obviously really, really deep and really, really good in GB. Is one of our biggest strong points. So yeah, that was sort of how I got into it, and then made the jump, still within British basketball, of moving to the older miles, alongside under some people, that have sort of shaped me as a person and my career really, and I owe a lot to at that club, which is quite remarkable considering obviously how far behind we are as a national league compared to the other professional leagues. But obviously we're blessed with so many talented ex-players such as JJ and the people that I've been around, so as Dan Johnson and Gary Peel, and some ex-greats all over the country, including in Sheffield, Colin Price, people like that, Kev Hayes, who stay around the game. And yeah, I'm really fortunate to soak up as much wisdom as possible from all these guys. So that was sort of how it all started, really.
Yeah, and then just again linking back to your first developments within the sport, I believe there was quite a strong group, Manchester group, when you first started. I believe it was you, Lucas, Finn, Laurie, Nat Craig, Jordana Bartlett. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anyone, but I think that, and Nathan. Oh,
Nathan Maguire as well. Yeah, who's obviously gone on to
Nathan
do good
Maguire.
things in athletics. So.
Yeah, Nathan Maguire. So, like, what was it like growing up with that group of people from Manchester?
Yeah, it was cool. Obviously, there wasn't much of an acknowledgement at the time. It was just being with your friends and doing what you love. That was pretty much it. So, I guess it shows a lot about Josie that so many of them players went on to represent GB, and do good things in other sports as well. So that's sort of the mentality that she instilled in the young people coming through, whilst also encouraging just the overall general enjoyment. So yeah, that was yeah.
That's good. And then you spoke about your time at Oldham. Obviously, you learned from greats like Dan Johnson, Pete Fimbo, Gary
Yeah.
Peel, Julian as well. So, what was it like, sort of picking up knowledge from them? What?
No, nothing. I just saw something funny over
Yeah. Yeah, I took Julian's spot. That's what that was. No,
Oh,
Julian's a really
terrible.
good guy. He was another big part of that group as well. So yeah, obviously I moved over to Oldham, and it was sort of being maybe 16, 17. It was full of really old people as far as I was concerned. Sort of ex players who obviously obviously really knew what they were talking about and had been to the very top really and experienced all. So yeah, it was obviously, I think if I had to put one name in the hat, it would be Dan. Someone who I still keep close contact with, and who has sort of molded me um, on court and as a person, as I said. So yeah, it was just really good. It was obviously very systematic and strategic, and there was so much sort of in a way structure in terms of the way they want to play. And I think that's sort of had a really big impact on the way I see the game and the way I think the game should be played. Whether right or wrong at times is as a lot of that has come from them and sort of mentors, I guess you could call them.
Yeah, that's good. And then, yeah, I believe you made your under 22 debut in 2012 at the under 22 Euros. Obviously, you were in that squad with Phil, George, Billy Bridge, and various others that you've basically grown up with in the sport. What are some of your memories from the GB Junior program?
Yeah, from that specific tournament, not too much. That was a long time ago, and a lot's happened since then. So I don't know how JJ remembers stuff from 30 years ago. But no, yeah, obviously it was sort of from that point 6 years that I was playing competitively in the junior, the under 23 system. So yeah, it was as you say, just playing, doing what I love with my mates, and getting to go to training camps in the summer. And my friends from back home are going off doing other things, and I was sort of, in my eyes, was living my dream, getting to do what I love every day with people that I was really close to. And then, I guess you could say, looking back, that was a big part of this core group that we have at the minute. So yeah, it was really good, and it's to get into that really early was, I feel like I was quite fortunate, because there's players that come into that sort of at the back end of that, and then have to fall straight into the senior teams. And for me, it was really helpful to have an experienced tournament style competition, because it's so different to playing sort of every weekend, and just sort of experiencing that tournament play really. And although it was at a much lower level, it was a really good learning experience, and it definitely I can only speak for myself, but it set me up massively to be ready to play in bigger competitions with the senior team.
All right, and then I'll let Jack talk for a bit after this next question, and you can talk to JJ for a bit as well. But yeah, so obviously in those junior tournaments, you played against arguably some of the players that are like big names in the international game just now. Players that come to mind is like Yannick Blair, Tom O'Neill Thorne, yeah, players like that. So like, what's it like, sort of, like playing against them now at senior level?
Yeah, I guess since the juniors have been in place, every generation, I guess, would argue they had the strongest generation. You know, people growing up playing against Pat and Joey, for example, or maybe a little bit earlier than that. Other people, like sort of a little bit later than that. Sorry, like the Philipskis and people like that. So yeah, we had it was quite a strong group across Europe and across the world, really. Sort of Thomas Boehmers and people like that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. I don't really think it affects you too much because we all know each other and know of each other anyway. Sort of because of the domestic leagues, we clash in Euro Cup maybe once. So the majority of people who play at that level, obviously you've seen before and you've played against before. So, but yeah, it's sort of cool to get to know people. But it was, from my perspective, the best part of it was the in-house, the tightness that we sort of formed and the bonds that we formed in that core group. I think, not sure how many exactly are in the senior team currently, maybe 4 or 5 from when I was in the junior team. So yeah, it's sort of testament to that really, and how GB uses that to bleed young bloods into the men's team and the women's team.
Yeah. Oh,
Cool.
that's good. I have got some more questions for you, but I'll let the other guys talk for a bit.
Well, I just we've got the video from Atlanta 1996. Obviously, we did show it before ages ago, but again, I don't know if anyone's watched it or what. But I'm just interested to watch a little bit of it, and just when the video's playing, we'll be able to hear your voice, JJ, when the video's playing. So just like, not talking for the emotions or anything. Like, we'll only go from the start, but just like, we're just watching for a couple. Just, you know, it's a long time ago. That's a cool video. And just interested to hear.
Yeah, sure. I probably won't have much to say until after.
Well, just like, even just the different chairs, I don't know. Just, it's interesting to me, but maybe not everyone else. Yeah, Rupert's there. And this, the Atlanta 1996 Paralympics. This is the final, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you spoke about Troy Sachs as well as the man tipping off for Australia. Like, heard from many people that he's not the nicest person in the world, but that's JJ there. Oh, nice pass.
Look, you know, we talked about Troy. Look, as I said to you, he's just a really demanding player, and sometimes, you know, his emotions get the better of him. There's no doubt about that. But he, you know, having played it with him as well in Italy, I can say that he's just such a taskmaster. He's such a beast when it comes to training, and so intense, and he expects that from the rest of his team. And when he doesn't get it, when he feels he's not getting it, he you know, he loses it sometimes. So yeah, people will have hard stories about it, definitely, because he's very demanding, but he sets a very high bar, and he expects everybody to reach that bar.
The 4 pointers on the court at the moment.
And it shows in his game, but
they often have.
And he's trekking across mountains in Australia now.
Yeah. I mean, he was just such a physical specimen. I mean, even here, you know, he was very young here at this tournament, so he's still relatively young. But you know, he had an extraordinary game in the final here. For my mind, still the best performance, I think, by a 4-5 that I've seen in a major final.
Still 28-19 in favour of Great. They have the ball now at the top of the key.
What he did in this game.
Number 7, Mark Cheney, but the foul on Australian.
It was an extraordinary performance, and although we were at the receiving end of it, and you know, it's hard to take, but you know, you have to acknowledge that at least we were a part of something extraordinary.
I have a couple of questions, JJ, if that's all right.
That moustache on Gary Peel is extraordinary. Jeez.
Yeah, shouldn't have been allowed, really, but.
No, I was just going to ask, what sort of, at this point in time, what sort of stage did that group that you had and this team, what sort of, where were you at that time as a team? What was expectations and what was the sort of story going into this competition?
Well, our expectations were justifiably high, I think, because we'd been coming along. I think we'd won the European Championships for the first time in the modern era in '95 in Paris, and that sort of really gave us a big boost psychologically, particularly as we'd beaten the Dutch in the final, who we beat the Dutch in the semi-final, and that they proved up to that point to be a really difficult team to beat. Rightly so. They had such players as Van der Linden and Kun Janssens, who's one of the greats. That's not always mentioned when people talk about some of the greats from days gone by. Kun Janssens was an extraordinary good player. And so, having won that, and we beat Spain again in a nail biter, 1-point game in the final. And so that we came into '96, and expectations, they weren't ridiculous. They weren't newspaper headlines. This is the best team that's left these shores that you get with the football sometimes. But I think justifiably we expected a podium. And once we beat Spain in the semi-final here, where Simon Munn had a really big, I think he had a 30-plus point game against the Spanish in the semi-final. All cards on the table. I think we were surprised to see. I think everybody was surprised to see Australia in the final because they beat the USA. Again, Troy, I think he drained 28 points in that game against the USA. So he was a big part in getting them to this final. So we expected to do well, and we did well for one half.
Took them to the European Championships in 1995. They beat Spain.
I bet it still haunts you. Well,
it does.
Told me that 100%.
Yeah, it haunts me, and I guess. Partly because I thought we could have done better. Partly, we had a couple of issues with injuries, and one or two of our players weren't quite there for various reasons. But the biggest thing, I suppose, from a selfish point of view, was that I knew that this would be my last Paralympics. So it was really the last chance for me to get a big medal, and that sort of played on my mind. It still plays on my mind. It doesn't go away, that stuff.
Yeah. Obviously, what lessons did you learn from such a horrible loss sort of thing? Like, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to ask. Is myself looking back, I'd know how I'd look at that. I wanted to know what your thoughts on it and what you would have done differently, or what you think maybe you were lacking in that game.
I can only speak for myself. I think in that game. I can only really say I wasn't good enough, and I don't think to look any further than that is my business. So I can look back on it and say, yeah, on the day I wasn't good enough, in the same way that Troy can look back on that game and say, yeah, I was good enough, and I we were 18 down and I pulled my team through, which is what he did. So I don't think I'm not unhappy with the way I trained in the 18 months leading up to Atlanta, because the preparation was 18 months for me anyway, physically, and I'm not unhappy with my preparation leading up to it. But on the day, I guess all I can say is I could do better, but I didn't.
Yeah, and then JJ, just what made you know that this was your last Paralympics?
Because I knew that, I was of a certain age, and I thought maybe I had another Worlds in me, which I did, another Europeans, but I thought another 4 years. I thought it would be difficult. I didn't think it was impossible, but I think that the odds were just stacked against me. And there were other players coming up as well, who I knew that change is a part of sport. No matter how good you are or not, it's sooner or later you're no longer viable as an athlete, and that's the shelf life is short as an athlete. Really at the top, you can compete domestically, but at this level that we're watching now, and the level that Gregg plays at, it's finite. And I knew that I've been playing a long time, and I don't think in wheelchair basketball it's really about how old you are. It's about how long you've been playing. It's how many miles you've got on the clock, because you can get players who are 40 plus who are still very good. But it's really about how long you've been playing, and I've been playing since I was 15 by the time we got to this point. So I realistically didn't think that I'd make another Paralympic team, and I didn't, and rightly so. I wasn't good enough. When the selection came along, I wasn't good enough. That's as it should be.
Well, that was easy pickings for someone like Sachs, but
and then am I right in thinking that your greatest achievement as a GB player was winning the 95 Euros?
Well, it's a win. It's a gold medal. So yes, I can't look past it. If I have to say something that was a highlight, it was that. Simply because we peaked at the right time, and all the players that we needed to performed at various stages in the tournament, which is what you need. So yeah, that has to go down as the greatest achievement. There'll be a lot of arguments about that, and there have been over the years. Like people are saying like Paralympic silver's not that bad, but it is bad.
Well, you're an honour to even get to play in the Paralympics. Obviously, yeah, you haven't won it. In your eyes, you haven't won it, and you haven't got the gold. But still, from an outsider's point of view, you're still pretty commendable.
Yeah.
Where's Gregg gone? I just realised Gregg ain't there. Where's he gone?
Suntan lotion, perhaps.
Some after sun.
Bit of after sun.
Oh, brilliant.
The game's frozen at this end. Is it just me, or is that everybody?
It's frozen here as well. We can stop.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we was trying to get Troy on here for possibly for this, but it's just it's hard work with the time zone and.
Yeah, it's tricky.
But yeah, and again, I take basketball out of this, JJ. I look up to you just as a person, as a role model without basketball, and I know a lot of the other people do as well. And I don't know if they get the exposure to you or not, but just like life, what advice could you give an 18-year-old, or like advice you could give yourself if you was 18? What would you tell yourself? Like, not basketball, life.
About what? About life?
Yeah, no basketball.
I think, again, there are several things I could say, I suppose, but I think if I was going to say one thing, is make sure that you have a good time and have it large. It's important that you put everything into your sport, but it's important that you have time away from your sport as well. And the importance of having downtime. So I was really lucky in that, once I had a shower and went out with mates and stuff, none of my mates, apart from the guys and the non-basketball mates, had absolutely zero interest in what I was doing or sport in general. They, I didn't. The guys I hung out with weren't interested in football or anything. So, and I found that to be a huge positive, because I could just absolutely shut down and put basketball in its box, and then open the box when I was back on court, which was every day, but still, sometimes. But I think it's important, especially from a psychological, especially guys, the way these guys train now. I mean, the way Gregg and his colleagues train now is probably way more than we were able to at the time. The facilities and the coaching that they get, it wasn't the same for us then. So they're almost strapped together as a group, and Gregg was just telling us how he's grown up with those guys, and I never got that, because the junior setup when I was Gregg's age, or a bit younger even, was almost non-existent. There wasn't really the junior setup as it is now, which is fantastic as it is now. So I'd say use the time away from basketball really wisely, and have it large, have a few beers, and don't make it the only thing, because it's finite, as I said before, and when it stops, if you haven't got other stuff that you do, then it's a really hard blow. And I've seen the effects it's had on some people who define themselves by what they do. And when they can't do what they do anymore, they don't know who they are anymore, and that's a dangerous place to be. So I'd say, make sure that you've got the rest of your life in place, but put everything you can into the game for sure.
Fucking gold there.
Yeah, very valuable advice. That.
I mean, I'm basically saying go out and drink beer, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and like you say and you said your friends they wasn't interested in sport, basketball, or anything. What were you doing away from basketball?
Look, probably best to draw a veil over that side of my life. No, we used to hang out. We used to go to pubs and clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
Just we were young, and we did what young guys do. But the good thing was that I didn't have to. You know what it's like, Greg. I mean, even if you go out now, you go out with George or whoever it is, your teammates. Or you have a gathering. Even if you all go out for a meal, inevitably you end up talking about the game or the last game or the next game or whatever, or basketball. And the advantage of having friends who have absolutely zero interest, not only in what you do, but they're not sporty people. They're just fat layabouts, basically. The advantage of that was that I could actually just not even think about basketball. They weren't interested in. They weren't that. I mean, they were aware of what I did, but they weren't really that interested enough to have a conversation about it. So I was able to completely shut down, and then reset once I pick up the ball again.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but that must be really refreshing. Just being able to switch off from the game completely. That's cool.
I told you that before, Jack.
Yeah, I can't do it, but in other ways,
I struggle with it.
No, but you're cool, Jack. I mean, you got a family, and you got other shit going on, so it's fine. But there are people who make that mistake, I think, unintentionally, I'm sure.
Gregg's got himself a worldie. He'll be all right. He's got another world.
I'll find someone.
Yeah, you will. You will.
Problem is, there'll probably be someone involved in basketball. But...
no, it doesn't have to be.
Oh well.
It's to be expected.
Right, only if you want it to be.
Yeah.
Let's not turn this into a Dylan dating show. We could do though. I'm well up for that.
Dear. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Get Dylan.
You've got 3 boxes to choose from, Dylan.
I don't fancy your options.
Awesome. Because I'm trying to learn from our previous streams. We're trying to keep this contained to 1 hour, and we're nearly there. Okay. I feel like we could talk more. But Dylan, anything more? You said you have more questions as we go along.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'll start chatting shit again. Right. So before I get back to my questions, I've got a few questions from others. Gav Chowdhury says to Gregg, "What car are you buying soon?"
Whatever it is, I'm sure it won't be as nice as his.
All right. Neil Pratt says, "Now that this is a football question, so I really don't give a shit about this, but I told him I would ask Gregg for him." So he says, hang on, I need to make sure I pronounce his names correctly. Do you think Rashford would be better off playing for Klopp?
No. One word answer, no.
No, okay. Liverpool supporter here. No, we don't want him.
No.
Right. Pat O'Neill from Northern Ireland says, "Who is the toughest player you've played against and why?" And that's toughest GB player and toughest non-GB player.
And that can be to both.
I'll let you go
as well,
first,
so-
JJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go first, JJ.
Well, toughest player I played against domestically. Well, there've been a few. I mean, Colin Price, I guess I'd have to say, is maybe not the top of the very list, but he's very near the top. You know, he was so tough to play against, and just he had a will of iron, and sometimes quite apart from he was such a gifted player, but it was just his sheer willpower alone that took him and his team over the line, and he revolutionized. He's the guy that revolutionized British basketball. I think it's fair to say. Internationally, tough player. Gosh, there've been so many. There've been so many. I mean, I guess
You can name more than one.
Well, there was a Canadian guy called Pat Griffin from way back, who was a single amputee but played low, and he was so quick and so tough. He was a tough player to play against. The usual suspects though. Gertjan van der Linden was an absolute nightmare to play against. So tough. Yeah, I mean guys like that. I mean there were a lot that were really difficult to play against, and some of the old greats who most people have forgotten. People like Michel Gradel, who was an extraordinary player in his day, the French guy. Really tough to play against, but I didn't play against him that much. And basically, from when I started, I think all of the Americans at that time were tough to play against. But I imagine now, like for example, Gregg, I mean, as an offensive mastermind that you are, playing against someone like Trevon Jennifer must be a fucking nightmare. Oh God, I swore. So it must be an I mean, playing against someone like Trevon Jennifer must be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, definitely. That obviously is probably the way I look at it. As there's plenty of them, but we're fortunate enough to have our own sort of similar style player. It's good to go, which has definitely helped to go up against that day in day out. But yeah, like you said, there's a few of them all over the world. I don't know if I said it on air last time I was on, but on the Americans, especially as you're saying there, that sort of rings true for currently as well. When I first got in the team in 2016 at the Paralympics, I came on against the USA in a group game, and it was relatively tight. Maybe we're down, but maybe within 10 or something. And I came on. I think the first time I touched the ball, I was on the wing behind the screen, and I caught it, and I made on the right as well, so I don't have any excuse. It's right-handed skip pass to the middle. I reversed it to the middle, and then as I made my move off the pick, I looked up, and Matt Scott was literally just putting it in the basket down the other end, and I was within like 4 seconds of me passing what I thought was a good pass, and I was like, "Raw, this is a different level. I'm way out of my depth here. There's so much that I've got to work on. I'm a million miles away." So yeah, that was a story that I always say. But yeah, I think another one as well, sort of in the players that I played with, I'd have to throw Terry Bywater in there as well for what he can do offensively, and that ability to, no matter what's going on and what's happened personally for him in that game or for the team, to just dig his team out and pull them through, as you were saying about Colin as well. Yeah, I think that's probably what I'd put up there.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of players as well. There's a lot within. We've got such a talented group. There's players that struggle to even get into our 12 that other national teams would love to have. So we really are blessed. There's players in there that we haven't even mentioned. Like the likes of Phil Pratt and his work ethic and what he the things he can do, and some of the stuff that I've seen him do in training is you wouldn't even believe. And then obviously. Yeah, and then obviously for people that I've played against, the general suspects, Patrick Anderson as well. But I think obviously since I've been playing and been competing against Pat, he's not been surrounded by sort of as much talent as he was in his prime, and obviously he's getting a little bit older as well. So I'm not sure if there's sort of one player that I think maybe Jake, obviously, because as much as I love talking offense, defensively is something that we really sort of pride ourselves upon as well. So someone like Jake, and the sort of game plans and the things that you have to put in place to stop him.
Yeah.
Along with sort of Steve Serio as well, that sort of playmaker. The whole fit of the US and among many teams, sort of playing against Spain and three bigs, whether that be domestically or internationally. There's so many different challenges and things that you could put in there, really.
I think you're a charge specialist as well. Like if you play NBA 2K or whatever, like you draw charges all the time, Greg. Like you say about defending Trayvon, Jennifer, but like you get the charges on those guys quite regularly, I think, because your defense is so fucking good.
Jack.
That's all right, mate. None one's a match for Greg. He's one step ahead. But any more questions, Dylan? Because I'm aware that I said to Rupert that we'd only be 1 hour.
Right. Well, yeah. I have actually got loads. So,
loads?
I mean, yeah, loads. Like I've not even scratched the surface. So I mean,
what's your best question? Give us your best question, Dylan.
Best question.
You have to bring JJ after and give him all the questions, or Greg. We ain't got enough time to do all your questions, man.
Right.
We've got so many, and I know we've got so many to ask.
Hang on.
God's sake, Dylan.
I know. Right, can I ask two?
Do whatever you want, mate. Well, Ruben might cut us off.
I'll ask two, right? So I'll start with JJ to begin with. JJ, who, in your opinion, are the top 3 wheelchair basketball players in the world right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Wow, that puts me on a spot, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, JJ. I should have given you more notice.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's going to be a tricky one. I think I'd have to. I mean, just results wise, I have to say Gregg's in that category. I mean, I don't think we can discount Gregg. Just to talk about him just for a second, like when the guys went for the Worlds, the last Worlds, some of us old codgers who've been following this team around all over the world, tasting. It's a beer tasting thing. Really, the basketball's incidental. But one of the things that I thought was that for GB to do really well, we thought that two guys. We needed Pratt to step up to the plate, and we needed Lee Manning to step up to the plate, and we felt, and guys like Harry Brown as well. But the one guy that we didn't have any doubts about going into that tournament was Gregg. I certainly didn't. I'd seen him play, and I've seen him play since he was, young, and he was the one guy that I thought I don't really have to think how Gregg's going to play because he's going to do what Gregg does, and that'll be fine. So I'll just let you blush for a moment. I think you touched upon Patrick Anderson before, and I think Patrick Anderson is still an extraordinary player. But what the current Canadian team shows, quite apart from the fact that, all right, Pat's a little bit older or whatever, but he can still score 30 points a game. Yeah. But what it shows is the value of Joey Johnson and Richard Peter were to that team. And those guys don't really, especially Richard Peter. I mean, Joey Johnson is, one of the great centers of all time. But people don't really talk about how great Richard Peter was for that team. What a fulcrum he was for Johnson and Anderson. So I still think Anderson's one of the great players of the world. There's no doubt about it. As for others, I mean, where do we end really? I mean, Oscar Gerbalak, he's getting on a bit, but still a fantastic player on his day. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to pin it down really.
Yeah. And then, Greg, same question to you. So the top 3 players that you think are the best in the world right now. It doesn't have to be as specific as 3. If you want to name more than 3, then go ahead.
Yeah, I sort of second what JJ's saying. I think for me, still undoubtedly. I'm not actually sure how old he is, Pat, but maybe late 30s. Maybe I'm being a bit generous there, I don't know. But yeah, he's, for me, undoubtedly still the greatest wheelchair basketball athlete on this planet. And I feel the gauge to that is you could put him, especially as a 4-5, you could put him still in any team in the world and he makes that team better. And I think that's one of the sort of best things you can say about someone. It sort of does show the impact that he does still have. But like you say, there isn't as much talent as around him as there used to be. Yeah, Jay just mentioned some of the names. Someone that I've always looked up to, people I look up to, sort of not just in my class, the other people such as Steve Serio, Sean Norris. The previous world was obviously the world MVP, so for me, we don't discount him either. So yeah, that's them. Sort of some of the names I'd put in there, but like JJ said, it's so difficult with the different classifications and what different people offer to their teams. It's difficult to sort of actually say a certain three.
Okay, so I think we should begin to wrap it up. But again, as we've got JJ here, quickly another bit of like life advice or coaching advice for young players. Like, as you're a coach and you're a player and you've been around for, is that the rain, Gregg, at your house? Is that
yeah,
noise?
I was hoping. That's the joys of living up north. Sunny
Awesome.
1 minute and then it's raining.
Awesome. Like to be them, like some players might have like a really great talent, but they're not coachable, or they don't want to listen, or they already think they're the greatest. Like, what advice can you give some players for them to be to get the most from a coach, sort of thing, that's trying to help them? Like, to be.
Well, look, if you have young players who already think they're the greatest, then most of the battle's lost. And it's meaning the battle is lost in trying to convince them otherwise and trying to coach them. So that's but I'm not saying the battle's lost on their part if they already think they're the greatest thing. If they think it goes dark when they sit down, then it's already half the battle lost as a player. But that's the challenge of a coach, Jack, is to try and find the buttons to press in players like that. For other players, I think the thing is to really not look at what coaches ask of you as criticism, because I was only talking to one of the university guys that I coached yesterday, and I said to him, criticism is there is no criticism within the sporting field, on the sporting field and the training field. Criticism is for critics, for journalists, and pundits and people who don't know what they're talking about. That's what criticism is for. But from a coaching angle, if you're trying to learn something, don't look at everything that's said to you as criticism. It's something to digest, and they're all points of development. It's ways that particular coach thinks that you can get better. Now, not all coaches can deliver that in a way that is absorbable by the player, because personalities are different, etc. And that's the challenge on the other side of that window, isn't it? That the coach has to know how to get the best from players. And man management and woman management is a skill that's important in coaching. So yeah, I think don't take everything. If a coach asks you to do something or says you didn't do that right, don't take it as criticism. Take it take it on board. Have a think about it. Sleep on it. Digest it and look at it just as a way of getting better. If you genuinely want to get better, listen to what the person has to say before you dismiss it.
That's answer, and yeah, you can continue to learn every day. Like, okay, away from basketball life, like you can still continue to learn. So yeah, and obviously Rupert's helped us do this streaming. Thanks for his help setting all this up and stuff. And I can't ignore I don't want to get political or too deep or anything, but there's some crazy stuff going on in the world right now, and just like Jay says, listening and criticism and that. Just if you can do some research on what's going on in the world right now, do a little bit of research on history, things like this. Like, the world's in a crazy place, and you can learn some things at the moment and do some research and make the most of this time sitting at home, not doing a lot. Like, do some research instead of getting all your research off Facebook and stuff. Go read some books and stuff, everyone. Get off the internet, get off these live streams. Yeah.
Apart from when you're watching us.
To go and get.
Yeah, of course. Unless you're on Upstreamedia, stay off the internet. Unless it's doing, but yeah, go do some research, everyone. And Rupert, I haven't actually watched it, but he's done a video last night on this channel, and I haven't watched it because I've been busy. But I'm sure it's something of value of watching. So yeah, get involved. Like, do some research, read some books, and don't be dicks. Yeah. Yeah. You got anything to add, anyone, before we sign out and say thanks to Rupert?
Yeah, thanks to
No,
Rupert.
thanks, Rupert.
Thanks to Gregg. And
Cheers, Rupert. That was good fun.
Yeah, and just a final one as well. Cheers to JJ as well. Thanks for JJ to come on, because it's tough.
JJ,
Obviously, we
cheers,
struggle,
Greg.
don't we, to get sort of ex-players in, don't we? And look at it from the other side, because I've still got 1,000,001 things to learn every single day. So yeah, it's good to have someone who's been there and done it. So yeah, thanks, JJ. It's been really interesting.
No,
we're more than honoured to have you here. More than honoured. Like, we've been honoured to have you come and coach a few of our sessions. I know Titans, you coach a few of their sessions as well, and you just mentioned the university player, and we're all very lucky, and I make sure all my players know how very lucky they are that you come and give us some of your time. So yeah, we appreciate this as well. So.
No, you guys have always been very generous in allowing me to come and train with you. So yeah, it's the least I could do.
And you can still come down and bang 30 points in all of us every session and make us all like commentate live.
Wait, 30 points? 30 points?
No.
I'm telling you, Dylan, he's got a lot more range than you, pal.
He was speaking figuratively, Dylan.
No, you can come down and still do a job. And stretch as well. JJ's the only player that's still, well, not the only player, but he turns up to our sessions. He stretches religiously before he trains. And I'm pretty sure that's why he can still come down and still play possibly like he did 20 years ago and still be just as good. I could be completely wrong, but
you are completely
still
wrong.
Pretty good. Yeah, fine. You're still pretty bloody good if you look after yourself. And yeah, stretching is vital, I think, in my opinion. But yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome back. You're
Cheers.
welcome back, JJ, whenever you want. Same for Greg, same for Dylan.
Give us a shout, mate.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
See you later on.
Appreciate your time, everyone. Bye.
All right.
Cheers,
Bye.
Rupert.
Bye. Bye. Cheers, Rupert.